The city was alive with its usual night music, sirens echoing in the distance, the dull hum of traffic, the occasional shout from a bar 2 streets over. But in the alley behind the old opera house, everything narrowed down to the sound of heavy footsteps and a man's shallow breath. Victor Hale, late 40s, billionaire magnate, pressed his back against the brick wall. His navy suit jacket clung to him in the humid night air, the silk tie askew. His watch, solid gold, worth more than a year's rent for anyone on this block, glimmered under the sickly orange glow of the flickering street lamp. It was the only part of him that looked untouchable. The rest of him, for the first time in years, looked breakable. 3 masked men closed in. One carried a rusted pipe, another a knife, and the third simply cracked his knuckles like he didn't need anything more than his fists. "Look at him," one sneered. "Big man out here without his bodyguards. Finally human." Victor's throat constricted. He could buy entire neighborhoods, shut down corporations with a single phone call, but here, stripped of his entourage, he had nothing. He'd come out the side door, foolishly thinking a late-night walk might give him a breath of freedom. Instead, it had led him into a cage. He raised his hands slightly, palms open, a silent plea. His mind screamed for negotiation, for reason, but his voice faltered, and the words lodged somewhere between his chest and lips. The men drew closer. The knife caught the light. And then, a small voice broke the air. "If you touch him, you'll have to get past me first." The 3 men spun around. From the deeper shadows at the mouth of the alley stepped a girl, no more than 10. Thin frame, wiry limbs, braids that caught the glow of the streetlight. Her hoodie was too big for her, the sleeves hanging past her wrists, and her sneakers were scuffed nearly to holes. But her eyes, steady, burning, were anything but small. In her hands, she gripped a basketball. Its leather was worn, seams fraying, patches of dirt ground deep into its surface. Victor froze. The absurdity of it made his pulse trip. A billionaire with everything to lose, and a child with nothing but a ball, stood between him and 3 armed men. The attackers blinked, then laughed. "You gotta be kidding me," the one with the pipe scoffed. "This ain't recess, kid. Go home." The girl didn't move. Her chin lifted a fraction. "I said you'll have to get past me first." The man with the knife grinned beneath his mask. "Or what? You'll dribble us to death." The others chuckled, the sound ugly against the brick walls. But Victor's chest tightened for a different reason. He couldn't look away from her. Every instinct screamed for him to tell her to run, to disappear before she got hurt, but his body was frozen, pinned by the sheer lunacy of her courage. The girl took 1 step forward, the ball pressed against her hip like a shield. Her small voice didn't waver. 3 against 1 isn't fair. Now it's 3 against 2. Victor's lungs stuttered. He hadn't felt this in years, someone declaring themselves on his side, unafraid of the imbalance. The attackers exchanged glances, their laughter fading into irritation. The one with the pipe snarled. "Get lost, kid, before you regret it." The girl rolled the ball under her palm, bouncing it once against the cracked asphalt. The sound echoed sharp in the narrow alley. She tilted her head, eyes locked on the men. "Funny. You're the ones who should be scared." Victor's heartbeat slammed in his ears. He wanted to shout, to tell her she didn't know what she was doing, but the words stuck. The knife wielder stepped closer, menace dripping from his voice. "And why's that?" Her answer came not with words, but with motion. In a flash, she twisted at the waist, planted her sneaker, and hurled the ball. The leather cut through the alley like a cannonball. It smashed square into the face of the man with the pipe. The sound of impact cracked the night. He staggered back with a grunt, his weapon clattering to the ground. For a heartbeat, the alley went silent. Victor's eyes widened. The rhythm of violence had been broken, not by his wealth, not by his power, but by a little girl with braids and a battered basketball. The other two men froze, shock etched even into their masked faces. The girl straightened, her chest rising and falling, her gaze unwavering. "Told you," she said softly, the ball already bouncing back into her hands from the ricochet. Victor's breath caught. This was no ordinary night. This was the night everything began to change. The night didn't end with sirens. The attackers scattered when the first man went down, cursing and tripping over their own shadows as the sound of distant voices drifted closer. Ari didn't chase them. She just stood there, one sneaker planted firm, her ball tucked under her arm as though it were a medal of honor. Victor Hale couldn't move. He leaned against the wall, staring at the small figure who had done what he could not. His chest still heaved, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. A child had stood between him and danger. A child. "Are you hurt?" she asked finally, her voice calm but not soft. Victor shook his head. He had no cuts, no bruises, only the sting of humiliation. She nodded once, satisfied, and turned the ball slowly in her hands. The scuffed leather squeaked under her palm. Then, with a shrug that belonged more to an adult than a 10-year-old, she said, "You should be more careful. Men in suits are easy targets." Before he could respond, she walked past him, out of the alley, the rhythm of her bouncing ball echoing until it faded into the city night. Victor stood there a long time after she was gone. By morning, the world remembered who Victor Hale was. Headlines flashed his name across financial papers and online feeds. Hale Industries closes multi-million deal in Singapore. Stock tickers rose and fell on his influence. Cameras waited for him outside skyscrapers. His name was printed on glossy magazines with titles like Visionary and Titan of Industry. But beneath the expensive headlines, Victor was hollow. He lived in a penthouse of glass and marble, overlooking a city that never slept. The kitchen gleamed with untouched appliances, his bed was wide enough for two but always cold, and the walls carried the faint scent of the wife he had lost 3 years ago in a plane crash. Since then, he'd built his fortress higher. Wealth insulated him, silence shielded him. He surrounded himself with bodyguards, advisors, and assistants, but none of them knew him. None of them touched the aching space inside him. The world saw a billionaire. Victor saw a ghost of himself. On the other side of the city, Ari's world was nothing like Victor's. Her apartment building sagged against itself, bricks crumbling, windows patched with cardboard. She lived on the 5th floor with her grandmother, Rosa, who worked double shifts at a laundromat just to keep the lights on. Ari's clothes rarely matched. Tonight's hoodie had once belonged to her cousin, 2 sizes too big. Her sneakers squeaked with every step, soles worn thin from too many city miles. Dinner was whatever Rosa could stretch, beans and rice, noodles from a discount packet, sometimes nothing at all. But Ari had one thing that was entirely hers, the ball. It was old, scarred from years of play on cracked asphalt, but she guarded it fiercely. Every evening, she carved out space in the alleyways and corners the city forgot, dribbling until the rhythm of it became her heartbeat. She'd play until her arms ached, pretending the brick walls were cheering crowds. "Basketball's not just a game," she once told Rosa. "It's practice for life. You fall, you get back up. You miss, you shoot again. And if someone's bigger than you, you learn how to move around them." Rosa had sighed, smoothing Ari's braids with a weary hand. "Baby girl, life's not a game." Ari had smiled, gap-toothed and certain. "Then maybe people just don't know the rules." That night, when she saw the men cornering Victor in the alley, she didn't think. She moved the way she always did, with courage in her chest and the ball in her hand. And for the first time, her game saved someone else. Victor sat in his office the next day, papers spread across his desk, but his mind wasn't on numbers. It was on her words. Men in suits are easy targets. He adjusted his cufflinks, staring at his reflection in the black sheen of the window. She was right. His wealth made him untouchable in boardrooms, but last night it made him prey. He replayed the moment her voice had cut through the night. 10 years old, maybe younger. Brave in a way that shamed him. He closed his eyes and saw her again, her hoodie too big, sneakers worn thin, but her eyes unflinching. And always, always, the ball. For a man who owned everything, Victor realized he envied her. Ari, meanwhile, didn't tell Rosa the truth. She came home late, slipped inside while her grandmother was dozing in front of the TV, and washed the dirt off her hands before bed. She didn't say a word about the billionaire in the alley, or the men she'd faced down. But she kept replaying it too. Not the danger. The way Victor had looked at her, like he couldn't understand why she'd stood there at all. She hugged her ball close under the covers, whispering to it like a friend. He didn't know how to fight. But maybe he can learn. Victor Hale's world and Ari's world should never have touched. One lived in penthouses, the other in projects. One signed contracts worth billions, the other scribbled dreams in a school notebook. One had built walls to keep everyone out, the other had nothing to lose and everything to prove. And yet, under the same restless city, their paths had crossed. What neither of them knew was that the ball Ari clutched so tightly, the symbol of her courage, her survival, would soon become the key to both their lives. And the night she saved him was only the beginning. Victor Hale was not used to waiting. All his life, people waited for him, CEOs lingered in boardrooms, investors refreshed their inboxes, chauffeurs stood at curbsides. But 3 nights after the alley, he found himself at the same spot, leaning against the same crumbling brick wall, glancing down the dark street like a man hoping lightning might strike twice. It was ridiculous. He told himself so with every tick of his watch. Yet he was there. And then he heard it, thump, thump, thump. The rhythmic bounce of a basketball. She appeared from the shadows as if the sound itself had called her. Same oversized hoodie, same sneakers that looked like they had seen 1,000 games, same ball tucked under one arm. Ari. She stopped a few feet from him, squinting in the weak glow of the street lamp. You again. Victor almost smiled. He nodded once, hands in his pockets. You don't belong here, she said matter-of-factly, bouncing the ball once. Neither do you, he thought, but he didn't say it. Instead, he gestured toward the ball. Her eyes lit up. You wanna try? Before he could refuse, she bounced it hard against the cracked asphalt. The ball skidded into his hands, heavier than he expected. Victor stood frozen, a billionaire holding a dirty, worn-out ball in an alley. It felt absurd. Yet the leather was warm from her grip, as though she'd passed something more than rubber into his hands. Go on, she urged. Shoot it. He glanced around. No hoop. She grinned. That window. 3rd brick from the corner. Victor followed her gaze. A jagged window high on the opposite wall, its glass long gone. Bet you can't make it, she challenged. His throat tightened. He wanted to hand the ball back, to retreat into dignity. But something in her eyes, bright, unflinching, pinned him. He raised the ball awkwardly and heaved it upward. It hit the wall 2 feet below the target and rolled back toward him. Ari burst into laughter. Not cruel, but honest. The kind of laugh that scraped pride raw but somehow felt cleansing. You throw like a scared man, she said, scooping up the ball. Watch. With quick, practiced hands, she dribbled twice, bent her knees, and launched it. The ball sailed cleanly through the empty window frame, smacking the opposite wall before bouncing back. She caught it easily. Victor stared, stunned despite himself. See, she said, tossing it from hand to hand. It's not about strength. It's about aim. Control. You don't fight the ball, you guide it. She bounced it back to him. Your turn. Victor hesitated, then tried again. The ball wobbled, scraped the edge of the window, and bounced away. Closer, she said encouragingly. You're not hopeless. Hopeless. The word stuck. That's how he had felt since the crash, since his wife's death. Hopeless, voiceless, untethered. And now this girl, this child from a world opposite his, was telling him he wasn't. He bent, picked up the ball again. This time, his throw was steadier. The ball arced, slipped through the window, and vanished into the shadows beyond. Ari clapped once, sharp and triumphant. Told you. Not hopeless. Victor exhaled slowly. Something warm flickered in his chest. She tossed him a crooked smile. You just needed a coach. For the next half hour, the alley became their court. Ari taught him how to dribble, how to set his feet, how to throw without tensing his shoulders. She barked instructions like a pint-sized sergeant, but there was joy in her voice, too. Victor, sweating in his $1,000 suit, found himself laughing silently when she teased him. He hadn't laughed in years. At one point, the ball slipped, bounced off his shin, and rolled into the gutter. Ari retrieved it, cradling it close. She whispered to it, almost like an apology. Then she looked at him. This ball's all I've got, she said softly. It never lets me down. It's like my shield. Victor's chest tightened. He thought of the fortune he owned, the vaults of assets, the skyscrapers with his name etched in steel, and how all of it felt emptier than the way she held that worn-out ball. He nodded once, solemn. He understood. When Ari finally tucked the ball under her arm and turned to leave, Victor felt a strange pang. He didn't want the night to end. She paused at the edge of the alley. You should practice. Next time, no excuses. Next time, he mouthed, though no sound came. She caught the movement of his lips and smiled. Yeah. You think I'd coach you once and give up? Please. Then she disappeared into the night, sneakers squeaking, the steady bounce of her ball echoing long after she was gone. Victor stood there, his heart beating in rhythm with the fading sound. For the first time in years, he wasn't waiting for profit margins or quarterly reports. He was waiting for the echo of a basketball, and the girl who carried it. And though he didn't know it yet, the ball she guarded so fiercely had just rolled into his life as more than a toy. It was a promise. Rosa Johnson didn't raise her granddaughter to wander alleys at night. But Ari had a way of slipping past rules like rain through cracks in a roof. Rosa worked long hours, her knees aching from standing all day at the laundromat, and she didn't always hear the door when Ari slid out with her ball. On Saturday morning, Rosa noticed the scuffs on Ari's sneakers, the way her hoodie smelled faintly of damp brick and asphalt. Her eyes narrowed. Where were you last night? Ari froze, toast halfway to her mouth. Practicing. Practicing where? Just outside. Rosa crossed her arms, her gaze sharp. Don't play games with me, Ariana. I can smell the alley on you. What were you doing out there? And don't tell me it was just basketball. Ari chewed slowly, buying time. Then she said, I met someone. Rosa's stomach tightened. What kind of someone? A man. In a suit. He's nice. And really bad at basketball. Rosa slammed her hand against the counter, making the dishes rattle. You stay away from strange men, you hear me? Especially men in suits. They don't see little girls like you, they see trouble, or worse. Ari's voice rose in protest. He's not like that. He was in trouble. 3 guys tried to hurt him. I saved him. Rosa's breath caught. You what? Ari's chin jutted stubbornly. He's not bad, Grandma. He's lonely. You can tell. He needs someone. Rosa sat heavily in the chair, her hand pressed to her forehead. Lord, help me. First your mama ran off chasing men who promised her the world. Now you, risking yourself for some rich stranger. She reached across the table, gripping Ari's wrist firmly. Listen to me, baby. Men like that, rich, broken ones, they'll use your kindness until you've got nothing left. You keep your distance. Ari wanted to argue more, but Rosa's eyes, tired, fierce, lined by years of hard truth, left no room. She swallowed her protest and dropped her gaze. But she didn't drop her plan. That evening, Victor waited at the alley again. The ball bounced steadily against his palm, his suit jacket folded neatly beside him so he could move more freely. When Ari finally appeared, Rosa was with her. The older woman's posture was rigid, her grip tight around Ari's shoulder. Her sharp eyes locked on Victor before he could rise. You're the man my granddaughter's been sneaking out to see. Victor's mouth went dry. He stood, smoothing his shirt, but said nothing. Rosa's eyes narrowed further. What's the matter, cat got your tongue? Ari spoke up quickly. He doesn't talk much, Grandma. But he listens. Victor pulled a pen from his pocket and scribbled on the back of an old receipt he'd been carrying. Victor Hale. He handed it to Rosa. She read the name and froze. Hale, as in Hale Industries? Victor inclined his head. Her lips pressed thin. So it's true. A billionaire playing in the dirt with my granddaughter. That doesn't make it less strange. Or less dangerous. Ari tugged at her grandmother's sleeve. He's not dangerous. He's my friend. Rosa crouched slightly, bringing her eyes level with Ari's. Friends don't hide in alleys, Ariana. And billionaires don't need little girls. Victor's chest tightened. He wanted to protest, to explain, but his voice failed him as it always did. Instead, he grabbed the pen again, scribbling fast. She saved me. She's the brave one. Rosa read it, her expression hardening. You're telling me my granddaughter had to save you? With what? Her homework. Ari lifted the ball proudly. With this. Rosa groaned. God give me patience. She straightened, glaring at Victor. I don't care how much money you've got. You stay away from her. She's all I've got left. She turned to pull Ari away, but Victor's hand moved before he could stop himself. Not touching, just reaching out, palm open, as if begging her to wait. He scribbled again, the letters sharper this time. I'll protect her. I promise. Rosa snorted. Promises don't pay rent. Promises don't keep kids safe. But her eyes flickered to Ari, who was watching Victor with a stubborn light in her gaze. Rosa saw it, the same look her daughter once wore before she left chasing dreams. It terrified her. Come on, she muttered, tugging Ari toward the street. Victor watched them go, his throat burning with words he couldn't speak. For years he had avoided choices, avoided risks. But now, because of a girl and her ball, he felt the stirrings of something he hadn't in a long time, determination. He picked up the ball Ari had left rolling on the ground, turning it slowly in his hands. This time, he didn't walk away. 2 nights later, Rosa found herself summoned to the police station. Confused and wary, she arrived to find Victor already there, seated calmly in a glass-walled office. The officer explained, the 3 masked men had been caught. Surveillance footage from a nearby shop showed Ari's involvement. Charges could have fallen on her. But Victor had already intervened. He had given a sworn statement, written out, signed, and notarized, that Ari had acted in self-defense while protecting him. He had even pulled strings to ensure the record highlighted her bravery, not her trespassing. Rosa stared at him through the glass. He didn't look smug. He didn't look entitled. He looked steady, resolute. When she stepped inside, he handed her another note, written in his careful script. She belongs wherever courage is needed. Even with me. Rosa's throat tightened. She wanted to curse him, to call him reckless, to tell him to disappear from their lives. But her granddaughter's laughter, echoing from the hallway as Ari bounced her ball, stopped her. For the first time, Rosa didn't argue. Not because she trusted him, but because he had chosen. And men who made choices for children, she thought, were rarer than diamonds. Victor Hale was not a man accustomed to waiting twice. Yet there he was, back in the alley, his tailored coat folded neatly on the ledge, sleeves rolled up. The ball Ari had left behind sat balanced on his knees. He turned it slowly, tracing the faded seams with his fingertips. Each scuff felt like a story. Each scratch was proof of battles fought on cracked concrete. It had been her shield, and now, somehow, it was his. He had spent days drowning in work, but nothing had distracted him from that small, stubborn girl. He replayed her laugh every time he missed a throw. He replayed her grandmother's warning every time he thought of seeking her out. But above all, he replayed that moment in the alley, the flash of bravery that had cut through his silence like a blade. When he finally heard the familiar thump, thump, thump echoing down the street, he felt something he hadn't in years, anticipation. Ari appeared, ball under her arm, eyes narrowing when she saw him. "You're still here." Victor nodded once, holding up her old ball like an offering. She tilted her head, lips twitching into a grin. "And you didn't run off with it. Good. Maybe you're learning." She tossed him her ball, the one she'd brought tonight. He caught it clumsily, nearly fumbling. She laughed. "Don't squeeze it like it's made of glass," she said, stepping closer. "Relax your hands. The ball listens better when you're not scared of it." Victor tried, bouncing the ball awkwardly against the cracked pavement. Ari circled him, correcting his stance, tapping his elbow, adjusting his grip. She barked instructions like a coach twice her age. "Bend your knees. Not so stiff. And keep your eyes up, you won't see the hoop if you're staring at your shoes." He followed as best he could. Each bounce echoed like a heartbeat in the narrow alley. For the first time, Victor realized he wasn't thinking about markets, mergers, or headlines. He was thinking only about the ball, the rhythm, and the girl's steady voice guiding him. After 20 minutes, sweat darkened the collar of his shirt. His chest rose and fell, not from fear this time, but from exertion. Ari crossed her arms, assessing. "Better. Not good, but better." Victor smirked faintly. He reached for the notepad in his pocket and scribbled. "Do I get a grade?" She snorted. "Right now? C-." "But with practice? You might pass." He chuckled silently, shaking his head. Ari's expression softened. She bounced the ball twice, then glanced up at the broken window they'd used as a hoop. "This place, it's my court. Nobody else cares about it, so it's mine." Victor followed her gaze. The cracked bricks, the peeling paint, the shattered glass, it was nothing. Yet the way she looked at it made it feel like an arena. She crouched, drawing a crooked white square on the wall with a piece of chalk from her pocket. "There. Now you've got a target. Every court needs a hoop." Victor's throat tightened. She wasn't just teaching him to play, she was teaching him to see possibility where others saw ruin. Later that week, Victor returned with something new. When Ari arrived, she spotted it immediately, a basketball in his hands, brand new, orange leather gleaming under the streetlight. Her jaw dropped. "You bought one?" He nodded, offering it. She held it reverently, fingers brushing the smooth surface. For a moment, she looked torn, grateful, but hesitant. She glanced at her old ball lying nearby, worn and battered. Victor knelt slightly, holding up the old one. He wrote on his notepad. "This one's your past. This one's your future. Both matter." Her eyes glistened. She hugged both balls to her chest, whispering, maybe you're not just some rich guy after all." Their meetings became routine. Every evening, when the city grew restless, they found each other in the alley. Victor practiced his shots under Ari's sharp eye. He improved slowly, each basket earned a grin, each miss earned teasing. She told him stories between throws, about her school, about Rosa, about dreams of joining a real team someday. One night, she admitted quietly, "I want to play in the WNBA. People laugh when I say it, but I don't care. When I've got the ball, nobody can stop me." Victor studied her, the raw certainty in her eyes. He envied it. He'd once dreamed too, of building something meaningful. But somewhere along the way, the dream had become just numbers. He wrote on his pad, "Don't let them stop you. Ever." She read it, smiled wide, then bounced the ball back into his hands. "Then don't let me stop you either. Shoot." Rosa noticed the change. Ari came home later, yes, but she came home glowing, her eyes brighter, her laughter freer. The old bitterness she carried, the weight of a childhood spent scraping by, seemed lighter. One night, Rosa confronted her granddaughter gently. "You've been seeing that man again, haven't you?" Ari hesitated. "He's not bad, Grandma. He listens. He doesn't treat me like I'm small." Rosa sighed, torn between fear and gratitude. She didn't trust men in suits, but she couldn't ignore the light Ari carried home now. For the first time, Rosa wondered if maybe, just maybe, this billionaire wasn't trying to take something. Maybe he was giving something back. Victor noticed changes too. His assistants whispered about his sudden habit of leaving early. His driver waited outside unfamiliar blocks. His security detail grumbled at the unpredictability of his walks. But Victor didn't care. Every bounce of that ball, every lesson shouted from Ari's small frame, chipped away at the stone wall around his heart. He caught himself one evening checking the clock, smiling when it struck 7. Not because of a meeting. Not because of a call. But because it meant soon he'd hear the sound of sneakers on pavement, the rhythm of a ball echoing down an alley, and the voice of a little girl who refused to let him be hopeless. For the first time in years, Victor wasn't waiting for tomorrow's numbers. He was waiting for tonight's game. And it terrified him, because he knew, deep down, he needed it. The night had grown comfortable. Too comfortable. For weeks, Ari and Victor had turned the forgotten alley into their secret court. Chalk lines marked a crude key, and the broken window stood as their hoop. Each evening, the ball's rhythm echoed through the bricks, thump, thump, swish. Their partnership had grown into ritual. But comfort never lasted long in Ari's world. One Thursday evening, she left Rosa's apartment with her ball tucked under her arm. The air smelled of rain and fried food from a corner stand. She skipped cracks in the sidewalk, humming to herself. That's when she noticed it. A figure trailing her, too slow to pass, too close to be casual. She quickened her pace. The figure quickened too. 2 more stepped out from an alley up ahead. The same men. The attackers. Her stomach dropped. "Well, look who it is," one drawled, his voice low and familiar. Little hero with the big mouth. The one she'd struck with the ball rubbed the bridge of his nose, still swollen. His glare burned. "Thought you could humiliate me and just disappear?" Ari tightened her grip on the ball. Her palms were sweaty, but her chin lifted. "Leave me alone." They laughed. "Not until we get even." The alley seemed to close around her, shadows thickening. Her heart hammered, but she forced her feet steady. She glanced over her shoulder, calculating escape. And then, a voice cut in, firm and unshaken. "Enough." Victor stepped from the darkness. He was dressed in a long coat, hair slicked from the rain, his jaw set. For once, he wasn't the one cornered. The attackers stiffened. Recognition flickered. Well, well. The rich man himself. Victor didn't speak, but his stare was ice. Behind him, 2 plainclothes men appeared, his security detail. They'd been watching from a distance, at his insistence. Cops won't care about her, the pipe wielder sneered. But they'll sure care about you. Victor raised a hand. His guards stepped forward. Within minutes, the attackers were shoved back, muttering threats but retreating into the night. Ari's knees wobbled. The ball nearly slipped from her grasp. Victor knelt, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. His eyes asked the question he couldn't voice, "Are you okay?" Ari swallowed hard, then nodded. But deep inside, she knew the truth. She wasn't the only target anymore. By morning, her fear was confirmed. The tabloids exploded. Billionaire spotted with mysterious girl in alley. Secret child. Street kid connected to Victor Hale. Playground or power move? Photos showed them together. Grainy shots of Victor catching her ball, of Ari laughing, of Rosa in the background one night, her expression sharp. Reporters swarmed Victor's office, demanding explanations. Paparazzi camped near Ari's school, shoving cameras in her face. At first, Ari was bewildered. Then angry. "Why do they care?" she shouted, slamming her ball down in Rosa's kitchen. "I'm just a kid. He's my friend, that's all." Rosa's lips pressed into a hard line. "Because he's rich, and you're not. Because people love a story they can twist. Baby, I told you, men in suits bring trouble." Ari glared, tears stinging. "He's not trouble. He's the only one who believes in me." Rosa softened, but only slightly. Belief doesn't stop headlines. Victor felt the storm from his side too. In his glass office tower, board members muttered about optics. Investors whispered about distractions. His assistant showed him headlines on her tablet, her voice tight. "They're speculating you're hiding a daughter. Some say she's leverage for charity campaigns. Others," she hesitated. "Others say she's nothing more than a street rat clinging to your name." Victor's chest tightened. He snatched the tablet, scrolling furiously. Each word sliced deeper than the last. He remembered Ari's laughter, her fearless stare. She wasn't a pawn. She wasn't leverage. She was Ari. He slammed the tablet down, startling his assistant. Then he scribbled on a notepad, pressing the pen so hard it nearly tore the page. "She saved me. I won't let them destroy her." That evening, when Ari met him in the alley, her shoulders sagged under the weight of stares and whispers from the street. "They followed me today," she said, her voice brittle. "At school. At the corner store. Everywhere." Victor's eyes softened. He handed her a note. "I'll keep you safe." Her lip quivered. She hugged the ball tight. "You can't stop people from talking." Victor thought of his empire, the sway he had over headlines, the fortune he'd used to bend markets. Maybe, for once, it wasn't about silencing voices, it was about standing tall in the storm. He reached into his coat and pulled out something new, a sleek, polished basketball, engraved with golden lettering. He placed it in her hands. Her eyes widened. "What is this?" He pointed to the engraving. It read, "Ari Johnson, my hero." Her throat closed. For a long moment, she couldn't speak. Finally, she whispered, "They can write what they want. But I know the truth." Victor nodded. The world could twist their story, but together they could write a new one. The trouble didn't end there. The attackers, still lurking, now realized the stakes had grown. Targeting Ari wasn't just revenge, it was leverage. If they could shake her, maybe they could shake Victor. They began to follow closer. Whispers of threats reached Rosa's ears. Notes appeared on their apartment door, "Keep the girl away." The alley wasn't safe anymore. Victor knew it. Ari knew it. But neither was willing to let go of the bond forged in those cracked bricks and chalk lines. So when Ari bounced her ball one last time in that alley, she looked up at Victor with steady eyes. If they're coming for me, then we don't run. We fight. Victor stared at her, the billionaire who had built walls around himself, now being led by a child with a ball. And for the first time, he realized. This wasn't just about her saving him that night. This was about saving each other. The headlines hadn't faded. If anything, they multiplied. Every day, Ari's face, sometimes blurry, sometimes clear as day, appeared on screens and in gossip columns. Some called her Victor Hale's mystery child. Others painted her as a symbol of hope. But too many called her what she wasn't, a leech, a liar, a street rat looking for a payday. Ari stopped walking home the usual way. The cameras followed her. Whispers trailed her like shadows. At school, kids pointed and snickered. Some asked for autographs. Others hissed insults under their breath. Rosa wanted to pull her out of school altogether. Ari begged to stay. If I run, they win, she said. Her grandmother bit her tongue but prayed harder each night. Victor, meanwhile, felt the weight of silence pressing heavier on him than ever. In the boardroom, he commanded armies of numbers. But when it came to Ari, he was still mute, unable to shield her with words, only with actions. And yet, it wasn't enough. The breaking point came on a gray Friday afternoon. Ari was walking home from school, ball tucked under her arm, when the same three attackers stepped out of a waiting van. Broad daylight. No masks this time. Their eyes were cold, their smirks confident. The street froze. A crowd gathered instantly, phones raised, ready to record. Well, if it isn't the billionaire's little pet, one sneered, snatching the ball from her hands. He held it high, waving it like a trophy. Where's your rich friend now? Ari lunged for it. He shoved her back. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Give it back, she shouted. Her voice cracked, but her eyes blazed. The man grinned, then hurled the ball into the busy street. Tires screeched as cars swerved. The ball bounced wildly, nearly crushed under a bus before rolling out of sight. Ari's chest caved. That ball wasn't just leather, it was years of dreams, her shield, her identity. And now it was gone. Before she could react, another man yanked her backpack, tearing it open. Her school notebook scattered across the sidewalk, doodles of basketball courts, WNBA jerseys, plays she'd scribbled in the margins. Pages fluttered in the wind like broken wings. The third man picked up one drawing, holding it aloft for the cameras. This is your dream. You think you'll be somebody. You're nothing. He ripped it clean in half. The crowd gasped. Phones zoomed closer. Ari's face flushed with fury and shame. She fought back tears, snatching at the papers, clutching torn pieces to her chest. The humiliation was a knife, sharp and merciless. And then, through the ring of onlookers, Victor Hale appeared. He pushed through the crowd, coat whipping in the wind, eyes locked on Ari. Gasps rippled as people recognized him. Cameras swung toward the billionaire stepping into chaos. Victor froze at the sight, Ari kneeling on the pavement, clutching shreds of her dream, surrounded by men twice her size. Her ball was gone. Her spirit was under siege. Something inside him cracked. The attackers sneered, emboldened. Look who showed up. Mr. Moneybags himself. You gonna buy her out of this, huh? Victor's jaw tightened. For years, he'd hidden behind wealth and silence. But not now. Not when Ari, who had risked everything for him, was being crushed before his eyes. The crowd waited. Reporters leaned in. Would the billionaire turn away? Victor stepped forward, pulling Ari gently to her feet. She trembled, clutching her torn papers. His hand steadied her shoulder. Her lips quivered as she whispered, "Don't let them take me too." Victor's throat burned. He looked at the men, then at the cameras, then at Ari's broken ballless hands. And for the first time in years, he made a choice with no board, no contracts, no advisors. He reached into his coat and pulled out the engraved basketball, the one that bore her name. He placed it firmly in her arms. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones captured every second. Then he turned, eyes blazing at the attackers. His security detail pushed forward at his silent signal. The men were yanked back, their arrogance shattering as handcuffs snapped around their wrists. Victor didn't flinch. He didn't retreat. He stood in the center of that storm, one hand on Ari's shoulder, the other pointing firmly at the thugs as if declaring, "Never again." The crowd erupted. Some cheered. Some shouted questions. But all of them recorded. Victor Hale, the silent billionaire, had spoken without words. And the world had heard. That night, Ari sat in Rosa's apartment, clutching the engraved ball like a lifeline. Her notebooks were taped back together, pages wrinkled but intact. Victor sat across from her, shoulders heavy but eyes steady. Rosa studied him, arms crossed. She had wanted to keep him out. She had wanted to protect Ari from disappointment. But what she'd seen today, it was different. She saw a man who had chosen. She saw a man who had stepped into fire for her granddaughter. And though she didn't say it out loud, a small piece of her resistance began to soften. Victor returned to his penthouse that night, staring out at the city lights. For the first time in years, his reflection in the glass wasn't hollow. It wasn't a ghost. It was a man who had something to protect. And he knew this was just the beginning. The video spread faster than wildfire. By dawn, every screen in the city showed it: 3 thugs dragging a child's dreams into the gutter, a billionaire stepping into the fray, and a little black girl clutching a golden engraved ball as if it were armor. Clips were replayed with dramatic headlines. Victor Hale breaks silence to protect child. From ally to hero, who is Ari Johnson? The night a billionaire chose to stand up. For years, Victor had been a ghost of a man, seen in headlines, absent in life. But now the world had witnessed something undeniable, a transformation. Victor wasn't satisfied with optics. He wanted permanence. He summoned his legal team at sunrise. For once, they weren't gathered to discuss mergers or acquisitions. He laid down photos of the attackers, police reports, Ari's scattered notebooks. His pen scrawled notes furiously across documents. Press charges. Maximum sentencing. Restrain media, legal notices to tabloids. Scholarship fund, Ari Johnson. The lawyers exchanged wary glances. This wasn't the Victor Hale they knew, the man who only invested in what yielded returns. But Victor's hand didn't tremble. He wasn't investing in profit. He was investing in a child's right to dream. That afternoon, Rosa opened her door to find 2 security guards waiting. Behind them, a sleek black car gleamed at the curb. Victor stepped out. He handed Rosa a folder, legal paperwork. Protective custody, the guard explained. Full-time security for Ari and her grandmother. Rosa bristled. We don't need charity. Victor shook his head firmly. He scribbled on his pad and handed it over. Not charity. Family. Rosa's throat tightened. She had fought to keep him out, terrified of losing Ari to disappointment. But now she saw the resolve in his eyes, the same fire she saw in her granddaughter's. Slowly, she stepped aside. Come in, she said softly. Inside, Ari sat at the kitchen table, her taped-together notebook spread out, pencil moving furiously. When she looked up and saw Victor, her face broke into a grin. You came. He nodded, placing a stack of brand-new sketchbooks on the table. Each had her name embossed on the cover. Her eyes went wide. She touched the golden letters gently. These are mine. Victor nodded again. Then he pulled out something else, a framed certificate. Ari Johnson Basketball Scholarship Fund. Ari gasped. What's this? He wrote. Your dream. Protected. Her eyes filled with tears. She clutched the engraved ball to her chest and whispered, You didn't just save me. You gave me back my future. But Victor wasn't finished. That evening, he called a press conference. Cameras flashed as reporters gathered, expecting a denial or spin. Instead, Victor walked to the podium with Ari at his side. Rosa stood behind them, uncertain but proud. He placed the engraved ball on the podium. The crowd went silent. Then, in a voice hoarse from years of disuse, Victor spoke. She saved me. The words were ragged, broken, but real. Gasps rippled through the audience. For years, Victor Hale had been mute to the world. Now, his first words were about her. He cleared his throat, voice steadier this time. Her name is Ari Johnson. And she is my hero. Flashbulbs exploded. Reporters shouted. But Victor didn't flinch. He raised Ari's hand high, the ball clutched between them, as if crowning her before the world. The impact was immediate. News anchors replayed his shaky but powerful words, She saved me. Editorials hailed it as a redemption arc. Social media overflowed with hashtags, hashtag Ari the hero, hashtag Victor speaks, hashtag ball of courage. But beyond headlines, something shifted deeper. Victor felt it the next time he stepped into the alley. It wasn't an alley anymore. Kids had gathered, chalking crude lines, dribbling borrowed balls. They shouted Ari's name, begged her to show them her moves. Ari laughed, tossing the ball with effortless joy. Victor watched from the edge, heart swelling. For the first time since the plane crash, he felt alive. Not because of money. Not because of power. Because of a child with braids and a ball, who had reminded him how to fight back. The final test came days later, when the attackers, now awaiting trial, managed to leak a statement through a tabloid. She's just using him, the headline read. Street kid hustling billionaire. Victor's board urged him to cut ties. Distance yourself, they said. This could ruin your reputation. But Victor didn't hesitate. He walked into the next press event with Ari on one side, Rosa on the other, the engraved ball under his arm. He held it up for the cameras, his voice clear this time. This ball is more valuable than any fortune I own. Because it belongs to the bravest girl I've ever known. And I will protect her with everything I have. The crowd roared. The cameras flashed. And the world knew, Victor Hale, once a silent titan, had been transformed. That night, Ari sat beside him on the stoop of her building. The city buzzed around them, but the alley was quiet, their court chalk still faintly glowing in the streetlight. She dribbled the ball once, then passed it to him. Your turn. Victor caught it cleanly this time, his form steadier than ever. He dribbled twice, then launched it at the jagged window hoop. It sailed true. Swish. Ari grinned. Told you. Even the richest man can learn to fight back. Victor laughed, a deep, genuine sound that startled even him. For once, the silence inside him wasn't emptiness. It was peace. The trial was swift. The attackers, caught on video humiliating Ari and later arrested on Victor's orders, faced the full weight of the law. Their bravado melted under the courtroom lights. The jury didn't hesitate. Assault, harassment, intimidation, guilty on all counts. For Ari, it wasn't revenge. It was closure. When the verdict was read, she sat beside Rosa, clutching Victor's engraved ball. She didn't smile, but her shoulders loosened as if a stone had been lifted. For Victor, it was more than justice. It was proof, this time, he hadn't been powerless. He had protected someone who mattered. In the weeks that followed, the city changed too. What had started as scandal grew into something else entirely. Murals of Ari appeared on cracked walls downtown, her braids flying, her arm mid-throw. Street vendors sold t-shirts with the words, "Even the richest need a shield." Sports programs for underprivileged kids received sudden donations, anonymous but rumored to come from Hale Industries. And in the community where Rosa and Ari lived, construction crews began clearing a vacant lot. Signs went up, "Future site of the Ari Johnson Court." When Ari saw it, her jaw dropped. She turned to Victor, who stood watching quietly. "You did this?" He shook his head, writing on his pad. "We did this." Ari hugged him, balls squeezed tight between them. But Rosa still wrestled with unease. One evening, she invited Victor into their small apartment. The smell of beans simmering on the stove filled the air. She poured him coffee in a chipped mug, sat across the table, and folded her hands. "You've done more for Ari than I can say," she began slowly. "But I need to know, why? You're a billionaire. You could have turned your back and walked away. Why risk yourself for a child who has nothing to give back?" Victor stared at her, the question heavy. Then he scribbled carefully. "Because she gave me back my voice." Rosa blinked. He flipped to a fresh page, writing again. "She stood for me when I couldn't stand for myself. She reminded me what courage looks like. I won't let her stand alone again." Rosa's eyes glistened. For years she had believed men in suits brought only ruin. But this one had stepped into their world not to take, but to give. She reached across the table, laying her hand over his. "Then you're welcome here." Ari marked the moment in her own way. On the day the new court was finished, she dragged Victor out before the paint was dry. The chain nets gleamed, the asphalt smelled fresh, and the backboards were spotless. She pulled a notebook from her backpack, her newest one, embossed with her name. She flipped to a page filled with chalk sketches of plays and dreams. Then she tore it carefully, handing him a sheet. It was a drawing of two figures, one tall in a suit, one small with braids, both standing under a hoop. Between them, a ball floated midair. Above, in messy handwriting, "Team Forever." Victor's chest tightened. He framed the paper in his mind like it was the most priceless painting in his collection. He mouthed silently, "Thank you." Ari smiled. "Don't thank me. Just don't quit the team." That night, Rosa stood at the edge of the court as kids from the neighborhood poured in, eager to play. She watched Victor kneel to tie a shoelace for a boy who didn't have laces at all. She watched Ari beam as she dribbled circles around 3 kids twice her size. For the first time in years, Rosa allowed herself to breathe deeply. Her granddaughter wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. And she wasn't alone. Victor walked Ari home under the glow of street lamps, her ball bouncing between them in steady rhythm. She chattered about school, about plays she wanted to try, about how one day she'd dunk even if she had to grow wings. Victor listened, his silence no longer heavy but comfortable, like a pause in a song, waiting for the next note. At the door, Ari turned, hugging the ball close. "You know, when I first saw you in that alley, I thought you looked empty." Victor raised his brows, surprised. She smiled. "Now you look full. Like you finally remembered how to play." Victor's throat tightened. He crouched, pressing his hand gently to the ball between them. Their eyes met. For once, words weren't needed. Inside, Rosa watched from the window. She saw them laughing, saw Ari glowing, saw Victor's careful patience. And for the first time, she didn't worry about what might be taken away. She saw only what had been given. Family. Not by blood. But by choice. The grand opening of the court drew more people than anyone expected. By late afternoon, the chain-link fences were lined with families, kids clutching their own basketballs, and neighbors craning to see the billionaire who had poured his fortune into their forgotten block. But when the speeches began, it wasn't Victor Hale at the microphone. It was Ari. She stood small behind the podium, braids glinting in the sun, her golden engraved ball tucked under one arm. She cleared her throat, glanced once at Victor, who gave her an encouraging nod, and then began. "I used to play alone," she said, her voice carrying across the court. "In alleys nobody cared about. On cracked sidewalks. With a ball that was falling apart. But I kept playing, because the game never gave up on me. And then, one night, I wasn't alone anymore. I saved someone. And he saved me back." The crowd murmured, leaning in. She lifted the ball high, the sunlight bouncing off its golden letters. "This isn't just my shield anymore. It's proof. Proof that no matter how small you are, no matter how little you think you have, you can still make a difference." Applause thundered. Rosa wiped her eyes quietly at the edge of the crowd. Ari smiled wide. "So this court isn't just mine. It's ours. A place where kids like me can play, dream, and remember that we're never too small to change the game." She stepped back. Victor rose slowly, standing beside her. He didn't take the microphone. He didn't need to. He simply placed his hand on hers, helping her set the engraved ball on a pedestal at the center of the court. Gasps rippled as the crowd realized, the ball wasn't going home with her. It would stay here, forever, as the heart of the court. A symbol. A legacy. That evening, after the crowd dispersed and the sun dipped low, Victor, Rosa, and Ari lingered. The court was quiet now, except for a few kids still shooting in the fading light. Victor sat on the sideline bench, watching Ari dribble circles around boys twice her size. She laughed every time she scored, her joy echoing like music. Rosa sat beside him, arms folded but softer than he'd ever seen her. "You know," she said, "I spent months thinking you were going to take her away from me. But now I see, you've only given her more." Victor turned, his eyes steady. He wrote on his pad, then tore the sheet and handed it to her. "I don't want to take her from you. I want to stand with you." Rosa's lips curved into a small, grateful smile. For the first time, she believed him fully. As twilight deepened, Ari jogged over, sweat glistening on her forehead. She plopped down between them, clutching her notebook. Flipping it open, she revealed a new drawing, the court, lit by stars, with dozens of kids playing. At the edge of the sketch stood three figures, her, Rosa, and Victor, together. She handed it to him. "So you don't forget. You're part of the team now. Forever." Victor's chest ached. He framed the paper carefully, then looked at her with a warmth he hadn't felt in years. "You know what the best part of a team is?" Ari asked, leaning back on the bench. Victor raised his brows. She grinned. "You never have to play alone again." The last image of the night was simple, but unforgettable. Victor stood at center court with Ari. She bounced the ball once, then passed it to him. He caught it cleanly. The kids who lingered fell silent, watching. Victor dribbled twice, bent his knees, awkward but steady, and launched the ball toward the hoop. Swish. The net sang. The kids erupted in cheers. Ari hooped, running to hug him. Rosa laughed from the sideline, the sound carrying like a prayer answered. Victor lifted the ball high, then handed it back to Ari. She set it gently on the pedestal again, where it gleamed in the dusk light. As they walked off the court together, Ari slipped her hand into his and said the words that would echo long after the night ended. Sometimes the smallest hands hold the power to save the greatest lives.